Was there a defining moment growing up when you decided you were going to be a musician, or did you harbour ambitions for other things?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I just wanted to stay out of trouble and just, didn't want to end up in jail. And music, when I was growing up, was never anything that could even be considered a vocation,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't until much later that I moved near San Francisco, and I met this guy that worked in a record store, and he actually played on a record, a guitar on a We5 record, and I used to hear it on the radio, and I just could never imagine how anybody could make that connection, So there wasn't really a defining moment. I mean, it was always, I guess I was just kind of a folkie, I just enjoyed playing music.
Yeah.
But I never really could make the connection of how you can make music coming out of somebody's television.
Yeah. You remember your first guitar?
Yeah, my first guitar was my sister's guitar. It was like a nylon string, and I strung it up with steel strings, and it snapped the neck off, And then my first real guitar was a Fender Stratocaster that I actually bought on Sunset Boulevard at the Guitar Center, which is still there.
Yeah. Looking back at the Green on Red days, what do you see now as its main achievement?
Well, I think that we were just audacious, and I think we did a lot of just knucklehead stuff, and I think that in a lot of ways, we were never really particularly precious about what we did, and in a way, that stuff is kind of held up,
Oh, it certainly has.
Just for those reasons, and we never really felt like a pop group.
Mm-hmm.
Although we ended up getting signed through some sort of mix-up. We ended up getting signed to major labels more than once. We always managed to sort of batten down the hatches and just go about our business as if we were stowaways on the label. And we never had a lot of those horror stories that I hear about today with kids, where they're pouring their demos from beaker to beaker and trying to set them up with producers and trying to invent, these pop records. We never really had those problems. So in a lot of ways, I think we were really lucky, And then like any good band, we broke up.
Were you pretty aware right from the beginning that the kind of musical direction you wanted to take?
Well, I just think that in a lot of ways, the music that we all grew up on was kind of white trash American rock and roll, and as well as all the obvious stuff like Creedence Clearwater and the Stones. And people just weren't doing that when we came out. They really weren't doing that. So we just kind of did what came naturally. We never really were able to. We never really had the desire or the ability to kind of reinvent ourselves to fit within the times. I think we might have given it a shot if we even knew where to start.
Yeah. Did you and Dan learn a lot from each other as songwriters during that time?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely. We went through that initial period where we just thought it was mysterious and that it was all, we were so superstitious and that we just thought they came out of the air. And then as time went on, we were able to sort of like conjure that up at will. And we got better at our craft, it's just, it still amazes me how Danny and I could get together in a hotel room and write a complete album in like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do that today if someone had a gun to my head.
Towards the end
I might could, but it wouldn't be anything that I'd ever want anybody to have to listen to,
Fair enough. Towards the end of Green on Red, were you feeling a pretty strong pull towards doing something for yourself musically?
Well, I mean, I never really felt constricted, in Green on Red. I never felt like, oh man, I got to get my own thing going. We just had these massive interruptions, and I always kept myself busy. And at one point, we were playing in the back room of this club, and myself and Stephanie Finch and Steve Yerke and Mark Eitzel and this kind of crew people who had already been sort of through the other side of the record machine, you know. And so, you know, we kind of, a bunch of songs just sort of surfaced during that period, and we went in and recorded them, and that basically became my first solo record, you know. Mm-hmm. But I'm always collaborating is the way I see it, whether it's with Danny or whether it's whoever I'm around, you know. Nobody's truly a one-man show, so I don't really feel it's that different.
I read another interview with you recently where you mentioned that perhaps you had a feeling even that you may have been finished in the music business after Green on Red. Was that right?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think anybody owed me anything, you know. And I looked around and I thought, well, you know, that was a pretty good run. Mm-hmm. So now I guess I'm either going to have to, you know, learn to steal car stereos or do something, you know. And so, you know, making that record, I didn't really have any expectations for the first solo record, and enough people responded. It wasn't overwhelming numbers, but enough people responded that it encouraged me to make another one, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I never really expected it, like anybody owed me anything, and you think, you know, I thought that there was enough muck out there, and you know, 8 years ago, I can't even compare it to today.
When you went solo, were you conscious of not wanting to sound too much like your previous work?
Not really. I mean, I just constantly do whatever it is I can do to keep myself interested. So it's always kind of changing, you know. But actually, the last 6 months I've been rediscovering country music, so who knows, you know. Mm.
Do you write now in a different manner now as a solo act?
Yeah, sometimes I think, you know, I tend to... It's really not that much different. I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, you can wrestle a song to the ground in one day. Sometimes you feel like you want to drag somebody into the room with you. There's just no two songs are alike, you know. Each one has its own kind of painful midwifing process, and some of them are just, you know, really easy.
So it can depend on the song, which is more of a comfortable process for you, writing alone or collaborating?
Oh, definitely. It depends on the song. And a lot of times I'll write things on my own and I just won't finish them, you know. And a lot of times you'll write a song and it won't ever actually become a record, you know. So there's always those various stages of things that songs go through when you constantly beat up on them. Then you take them out live and you beat up on them some more, and you never really know. You know, your favorite song a year later might become your least favorite song.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So it's always just kind of just, I don't know, just full of wonder, you know.
So there's a pretty heavy editing process going on in your songwriting?
Yeah, but I hope it doesn't look that way, you know. The idea is to kick a song around and tweak it and put it up on blocks and rotate the tires and do whatever it is you need to do to it, and hopefully when it's done it'll sound like you wrote it in 5 minutes.
Yeah. You mentioned that they can change on stage. How much do they change perhaps in the recording process?
A lot. I mean, every record is basically a snapshot, you know, of that song at that given time and place, and they're still living and breathing well after you've cut them, and you know, I don't really have a habit of going back and referencing the records, you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you seek out inspiration for song ideas, or do they just pretty much come to you?
Well, you gotta have your antenna up, you know. And sometimes, you know, sometimes it's the small ideas that pan out, you know. Sometimes it's just the challenges, you know, with words and things like that is to not so much dazzle somebody, but to come off with something that sounds like it was already there. Mm-hmm. So, oftentimes you might have a high concept idea, and it won't necessarily make a great song.
Now, I believe your first solo record was done at a very low cost.
Yeah, I think it was done for about $800. Or maybe I read that somewhere. I might have started that rumor.
I've read interviews.
I can't even remember really how much I kept for myself and how much was actually spent, but it was just invisible, the whole process.
It was a bargain basement cost.
Oh, completely, yeah.
I've read interviews where you've claimed that to be possibly your best work. Do you think the cheaper is better sometimes?
Well, I think that desperation, I see it in other people's work. I mean, I think that I like the Basement Tapes and Tonight's the Night, and I like, Mellow Gold, and these are all records that were done, just out of nothing.
Absolutely.
It tends to keep you focused on the song and less on, the tracks.
Over the years, you've worked with a wide array of producers and some great names amongst them. Has this been important to you to get a different perspective on production?
Oh, definitely. Making these records, gives you the opportunity to work with people, and if you pay attention, you can learn some tricks and steal some tricks, and you get to sort of get inside another person's musical worldview, and that stuff's always rewarding, and sometimes it's frustrating and not so much fun, but if you're half awake, you're going to learn something every day.
Has it made you want to go a step further into production yourself?
I don't really have an interest in production. I mean, I like to demo songs because I like to do them fast and quick, and I like to get the sound out of my head and to find the quickest way to go from A to B, the shortest distance, whereas with production tends to be more of a committee involved, and oftentimes you're trying to get somebody else's vision to stick to tape, or maybe you can't get somebody to sing something the way you hear it in your head, and that can be kind of frustrating. So most of this extracurricular stuff I've done has just been through songwriting.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a song cut the other day by a Nashville artist on Capitol, produced by the guy who produces the Dixie Chicks, and it's something I could have never even imagined. I went back and I listened to the demo of the song, and it had just like this crazy wah-wah solo, and I can't even imagine it being a country song, but that's going to be fun to get that in the mail someday.
Sure. When critics and reviewers are writing about your music, so often comparisons with artists from the 60s and 70s crop up. Were you a huge fan of that music growing up?
Well, that's just where the good music was, There's a lot of exciting music today, and hip-hop, and places like that where people can invent a record in their bedroom. And it's just everything got so bloated that music in a lot of ways has gotten worse. So, I mean, my heroes are people like Carole King and Jerry Goffin and Dylan and Dan Penn and Barry Mann and Mickey Newbury and Don Williams, and they're just from all over the map, but most of them are from the 60s and 70s. I don't know why.
So you don't get tired of those comparisons? You're happy to sit amongst all that?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's gonna listen to the record and try to write some kind of owner's manual for somebody out there that it might connect with, that's great.
Yeah, you're with...
I mean, I got a lot of Graham Parsons comparisons before I even knew who the guy was, I mean, you have to understand, when I was a kid, I heard about a guy who had a Graham Parsons record, but I didn't, there weren't any CDs or anything,
Now you're with...
And subsequently, since then I thought, I've heard the stuff, I go, that's very flattering, I can work with that.
Yeah. There are worse things to be compared to, that's for sure. You're with Cooking Vinyl Records these days. How have you found them to deal with?
Oh, they're wonderful. They're wonderful. They just kind of left me alone and let me do what I want, and we did one record with them, and then we thought maybe we might do another. And I got a phone call from the president of the label over there, Martin Goldschmidt, and he asked me if I thought maybe I'd like to do another record, and I said, well, sure, when do you want it? And he said, whenever you're ready, and I said, okay, I'll let you know, and that's kind of how we were able to do the last record.
Oh, so that's good. So there's no real pressure from them at all. They pretty much let you go as you like.
mean, it really wouldn't work for them any other way, and they're not paying enough money to act that way. So,
would you consider yourself a songwriter or guitarist first?
It's just all kind of the same thing, you know. I mean, if I didn't have the songs, then nobody would have even ever heard me play guitar, and if the songs didn't give me a context in which to play, then, you know, I probably wouldn't even play. I don't know. I mean, it's all just kind of the same thing. I just try to pull this stuff out by the roots.
I was reading some notes on your Hurting Business album where you comment on each song track by track. Some of the explanations and comments are quite amusing and a little bit cryptic. Do you like to keep an element of mystery to your songs and not give too much away?
Well, you want the songs to make sense, you know. That's probably the biggest struggle that any artist has, you know, whether you're a filmmaker or a painter or a songwriter or you're making records. You want it to make sense, and you don't really want people to have an owner's manual to get through it. But at the same time, you know, you don't want to connect too many of the dots, and you want to keep a sense of mystery in there so that people will return to the records, you know. And generally, when a record's done, they want you to write a bio or talk about the songs, and it's just much more fun to make stuff up. You know?
So I gather a sense of humor is important too in your songwriting?
Well, it's a sense of humor is crucial to just being a musician, because, you know, if you want to spend 3 days driving from San Francisco to New York in the back of an Econoline van, you know, sitting on a twin reverb, you better develop a sense of humor, you know. It's like, you know, it's evolutionary. It's the only way to survive.
Now
it's Darwinistic, you know.
You've mentioned the possibility of a new record. What stage is that at? Like, are the songs ready?
Not at all. I've gotten involved in all that stuff that I do in between records. I'm trying to do some stuff for film, and I'm trying to write with some other people, and I've got another group that I play in called Go-Go Market, and I'm just kind of out there, you know, dragging my net, keeping my eyes open, and I don't really have a record in my mind yet.
So no thoughts of a musical direction you'd like to take either?
Well, I'd like to take what I did on the last record and continue to do that, and only better, you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and touring-wise, what's your situation? How much of the year would you spend on the road?
I guess about 3 or 4 months. You know, we spent 2 months in Europe, and we've been out in the States for a couple weeks here and a couple weeks there, and we'll probably continue to do that for the next 6 months or something, and then hunker down and see if we can't invent another record.
Terrific. I will look forward. All right, Chuck, I won't hold you up any longer.
Well, thanks a lot, man. I'm glad we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, terrific. Thanks for your time, and best of luck with the new record when you do get down to it, and hope you can follow it up with a trip down our way. We'd love to see you.
All right. Well, God bless y'all.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.